Well, that was unexpected. Hey everyone, Ryan Reed here, and today we are talking about Space Jam: A New Legacy, the new sequel slash reboot slash follow-up to the original Space Jam movie from 1996, I believe. And I want to start off this review by saying that I am not the world's biggest Space Jam fan, despite the shirt and the fact that they have an awesome theme song. I was around 6 years old, I think, when the original Space Jam came out, so I was the perfect age to go see the film. I saw it in theaters, and I'd seen it a couple times on home video, but even back then, I wasn't that big a fan, and as I got older, I could see a lot of the flaws that the movie has. It was based around a commercial series with Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny, and someone, higher up decided, we should cash in on this and make a movie to make even more money. And so when you watch Space Jam now, it's hard to not watch it as, at least for me, as kind of a commercial. The plot kind of is convoluted. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It just feels like a way to get Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny together, and then on top of that too, like I said, it feels like a big ad the entire time because it was all about selling product. And Michael Jordan's performance comes off as very flat throughout the entire film. And I'm not here to criticize anyone's acting performances. I mean, I'm not the world's best actor or anything like that. But that being said, I think that he, as a professional athlete, did the best he could. And so Space Jam to me always just kind of felt lifeless to some degree. But that being said, I do understand that it holds a very nostalgic place in some people's hearts, and some people really truly love that movie, unironically. They just really like Space Jam a whole lot. They grew up with it, it was a film that meant a lot to them. Maybe they were a Looney Tunes fan, maybe they were a Michael Jordan fan, maybe they were both. Maybe that movie just hit them at the right time, and so it just works really well for them. And even today, they're huge fans of that movie. And so I get that. I mean, I am, even though it's not one of my favorite films, I am nostalgic for Space Jam a bit too, just because it feels very 90s. It just kind of epitomizes that decade and that time period I grew up in. And so I do like it on that level. I just think the movie is flawed. So I am not here to rain on anybody's parade or anybody's love of Space Jam. If you love it, go out and love it. But that being said, when the trailer for Space Jam: A New Legacy dropped, even I, not a big Space Jam fan, was very concerned. Now, admittedly, I'm not someone who follows basketball very closely, and so I don't know a whole lot about LeBron James or anything. All I know is that people who really like him, and when he's not on people's teams, people seem to really dislike him. I do know that he is a great player from what I've heard, and I knew he was in the movie Trainwreck. I believe he had a part in that, but I never saw Trainwreck. So that's about all I know about LeBron James. So I couldn't judge the movie on, that level. If people were mad because LeBron James was in it, I was like, I don't know anything about LeBron James, so sure, okay, great, he's a new basketball player. It makes sense for him to be in the movie, not Michael Jordan. But every trailer and every image I saw of the movie and everything, it just looked ill-conceived at best and cringy at worst. All of the trailers that came out, I was like, oh my god, this looks terrible. It looks like a cash-in. It looks like they're cashing in on a movie that was already kind of a cash-in, and on top of that, it doesn't look well written. It looks really poor. It just looks cringy and awful and just terrible. But to my surprise, the movie just came out. It's on HBO Max. I have HBO Max. So I decided to sit down and watch it for that kind of nostalgic, response. And lo and behold, the movie is not terrible. The Space Jam: A New Legacy, dare I say, is actually kind of fun. Hey, quick shout out to you for stopping on this video. I really appreciate that you're taking a chance to watch it here. And if you get a chance, if you like this content, maybe subscribe to my channel. It helps me out, tells me that you want to see more stuff, and it allows me to just keep on making things that you all want to see. But now, back to this impromptu review. The movie revolves around LeBron James and his son getting sucked into like a cyberspace by a vengeful AI, and based on a video game that LeBron James' son has created, they have to play this virtual style of basketball, and so of course LeBron James has to get all of the Looney Tunes together to be able to play this. And if that plot sounds convoluted, it actually plays a whole lot better than you think it would. In actuality, as the movie unfolds, we're given time to kind of understand how all these pieces fall into place. We understand how this AI comes into play in the story, which, by the way, the AI is played by Don Cheadle, and he is so good in this movie because he's just chewing the scenery, and you can tell he's having like the time of his life doing that. And so he's just a blast to watch on screen. And on top of that, it makes sense why the Looney Tunes are part of this virtual WB, space within this virtual world, and everything kind of falls into place fairly well. We understand why they're playing basketball, and it's not just because LeBron James is a basketball player, but it's because of his son being this game designer and everything. And it all kind of works in a weird way. Now, it's still a movie that you kind of have to check your brain at the door. Don't think that this is going to be like a super intricate movie and everything is just going to be so intelligent. No, I mean, it's a movie made for families. It's a family movie. It's a Looney Tunes movie. It's a movie where, once again, you're putting the Looney Tunes with a basketball player, and that's the entire movie, pretty much. That's the gimmick of the movie, is getting to see these two entertainment forms that normally don't go together. And so because of that, actually seeing a pretty well thought out plot, I enjoyed it. I really kind of did. I actually think the plot works a lot better than the original Space Jam. Now, I will say, when I saw the runtime of the movie, which is an hour and 55 minutes, I was a little shocked by that, because I think the first one's like 80 minutes. And so I was like, man, I don't know how they're going to stretch this. And I think for the most part they do okay. I do think it gets a little long at the end of the movie, but overall I actually didn't feel the runtime all that much. And on top of that, the movie legitimately made me laugh several times, and it wasn't just the Looney Tunes segments. As a matter of fact, there were moments in the real world where I really chuckled. There's a scene with a security guard that I thought was really funny. LeBron James has some moments where he is just legitimately funny. And I will say, I've seen a lot of reviews about this movie where people are kind of tearing his performance apart. But I think there's a couple things to keep in mind. A is the fact that, remember Space Jam, the first movie? Michael Jordan, like I said earlier, is not particularly great in that movie. And I actually think LeBron James is better in this movie than Michael Jordan was in that movie. Not every line works. There are definitely some moments where he feels a little stiff. But overall, he actually has some really good line deliveries. There's a lot of factors that go into a performance, but ultimately, I actually think, 70% of his performance in this movie is pretty good and pretty natural, and I kind of buy him. I buy him talking with the Looney Tunes and stuff at times. Now, it does help that a portion of this movie is completely animated. Instead of going the route they did with the original Space Jam, they pulled this version where LeBron James is animated as like a cartoon, instead of like how Michael Jordan was live action the entire time. And then you kind of see it in the trailers, the part where they kind of sort of bring the Looney Tunes into like 3D space and world, which kind of doesn't make sense without going into spoilers, because the last few scenes of this movie are them 2D again, and it's kind of like, well, why didn't you just keep the Looney Tunes 2D the entire time? And overall, the first half of this movie, legitimately, I enjoyed. It's not a movie that's gonna change the world or anything like that, but legitimately, I was watching it and I was like, this is actually way better than I expected. And I kind of like what they're doing. I like how this plot unfolds, even though it's, insane. I like how LeBron James is interacting with the Looney Tunes. I like how they're getting, like, the team back together. I actually liked that a whole lot. Now, I do have a few problems with this movie. The first one is actually the basketball game itself. Not the video game within the movie, but the way that the scenes at the basketball game play out don't really work for me. They were a little bit, harder to track at times. It felt kind of like convoluted. On top of that, the reason I think they're so difficult to kind of to not get distracted in is the fact that in the background, instead of it just being an audience or something and it's kind of like a blurry background, they've got all of these Warner Brother characters, because they're in this virtual space. They've put all of these Warner Brother characters in the background and they're in focus. So you'll see like, Pennywise and Danny DeVito's Penguin and the Joker and like all these characters in the background in focus while scenes are playing out, and it becomes very distracting, and not in like a fun like, oh hey, it's that character. It just feels weird, and I don't know why they chose to do that. I think they have an idea in the movie where real people get sucked into the cyberspace to watch the game, so why not have just made it a crowd of people, and then it would have been way less distracting, because like I don't need to see like, Jabberjaw in the background, slightly out of focus, but he's clearly there. Like, it just becomes kind of distracting. It makes the basketball game a little bit harder to watch. On top of that, the Goon Squad, who's like the bad guys in this movie, they're just not as interesting of villains to me. They kind of come into the movie way too late, and so it kind of makes the basketball game not feel as important to the plot, ultimately, like the original basketball game was. There are definitely some cringy moments in this movie, too, like just poorly written jokes or outdated jokes. and they do not work. The weird thing is, most of the stuff you see in the trailer is all of that stuff, so I don't know who cut this trailer and thought these are the best parts, because they are very clearly the worst parts of the movie. When you've got some legitimately funny stuff, there's even funny stuff early on where they go to these different Warner Brothers properties before they all kind of get together for this big basketball game. And, you know, those moments also worked as well. It was fun seeing, like, you know, DC characters interact with the Looney Tunes and stuff. Like, that stuff was all enjoyable. I liked it. It's just the way the basketball game itself was put together. And then these cringy moments on top of it did not help. They were kind of... Ooh, they're particularly bad. Like I said, there's a Matrix scene in this that does not work and is really bad. Honestly, most of the cringy stuff comes from Granny, which I don't understand. They're really bad jokes. There's like a scene, there's like a hip hop scene that's really cringy, and it's just there's a lot of cringe at certain moments of this movie. But I would say again, like 70% of it is not like that. You kind of have to sit through a few of these bad scenes, but you also get some legitimately funny, true to Looney Tune form scenes that work. Now, of course, the internet being what it is, I have to talk about Lola Bunny, because the internet went crazy over, you know, the redesign of the character. On top of that, they went, you know, people were really angry about them wanting to kind of change up Lola's character. Now, obviously not everybody was on that side of things. I ultimately didn't care. My thought was, look, if they want to make Lola a more, you know, well-rounded character to fit in the movie that they're making, they want to change some of her personality traits or whatever, great. I mean, that's fine. If it helps your movie out, awesome. But my problem is they made Lola Bunny really boring in this movie. Ultimately, that's my issue. We've had other interpretations of Lola where she is interesting and she's funny and she's a quirky, weird Looney Tune character. They've kind of taken what she was in Space Jam and kind of evolved her as shows have gone on and stuff like that. And you know, great. But here in the movie, for some reason, they took out all the stuff that they... you know, people either loved or hated about Lola in the original film. They took all of that away, which is fine if you want to change her up for this movie. But then they forgot to give her personality traits. The closest we get is a scene with her and Wonder Woman at the beginning of the movie. And after that, she is just kind of flat and lifeless through the entire movie. And that's a shame because all the other Looney Tunes characters get to pop. They all have at least one little moment, you know. And so when you've got people being ridiculous like Bugs or, you know, Yosemite Sam or any of those characters, to see just this character be like, hey, cool, I'm gonna shoot a basketball. Good job, Bugs. Like, she's so boring. And that's not a performance issue. That's not the acting. It's all a writing problem. It all comes down to the fact that they didn't want to make Lola what she was in the original Space Jam. They wanted to give her more depth, so they took that stuff away, but then they forgot to write her. She almost might as well not be in this movie. That's how poorly they wrote her character. So take that as you will. You know, some people are going to be really angry about that. Some people are probably going to like her characterization, whatever. To me, I don't mind them changing her and evolving her. They just made her really, really boring. So that's a problem. Oh, also, the last scene of the movie makes no sense. I'm not going to spoil it, but they set something major up. Obviously, you know it's not going to go a certain way, but then they never explain how things are fixed. It's a mess. The final scene of this movie, and it's not even the final scene, it's like the last, 3 minutes of this movie are like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Why, what? But, all that stuff aside, this movie's actually pretty fun. So look, if you're a fan of Space Jam, and you thought this looked like hot garbage, check it out. You might enjoy it. If you're like me, and you're not really a fan, but you're kind of curious about the movie, watch it. You might get some good laughs out of it. You might find that you enjoy it. And on top of that, if you were a kid when Space Jam came out, and now you're a parent, and you've got kids who are interested in seeing Space Jam, you could do far worse for movies. Sit down, watch it as a family, have a good time, enjoy it. And I think for all the hype and criticisms that this movie was getting, it kind of falls somewhere in between as a perfectly acceptable, fun family film. And that's all it really sets out to be. It's not trying to break the mold of movies or reinvent what Space Jam is. If you want to see the Looney Tunes play basketball with a famous basketball player, that's what you're going to get. And it's fairly well written. Dare I say, I think the plot makes more sense than the original Space Jam. So, check it out if you want to. If you're interested in Space Jam: A New Legacy, I say give it a shot. But But if you want to see more videos like this, definitely check out the other impromptu reviews that I have on this channel. You can see all kinds of movie reviews off the top of my head. Hey, are you a fan of horror movies? Check out my analytical horror movie show, Fright Films, that's also here on this channel. On top of that, you can check out some of my artwork videos, all kinds of stuff here. So please subscribe if you can. It helps me out immensely. On top of that, like this video, click the bell to ring and get notifications, as all the YouTubers say, and I'll talk to you all next time. Bye.